Shalom. I would like to give all honor, glory, and praises to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham Wakakwadash. I would like to give double honors to the apostles and elders, great millstone. Salutations to all you sincere Akim, pushing this word out across the four corners of the world. And this is an article from skynews.com, and the title says, Nuclear War Will Cause Global Famine with More Than 5 Billion People Killed, New Study Finds. And this was published on August the 15th, 2022. The warning comes as humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation, according to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. So within these great prophetic times, as it says in Ecclesiastes, the 3rd chapter and the 1st verse, to everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under the heaven, Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah is about to bring the worst possible outcome ever, and that's by the means of nuclear warfare. So let's get there right quick in 2nd Esdras, the 8th chapter, and the 50th verse. For many great miseries should be done to them that in the latter time should dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. And that misery goes into a condition of external unhappiness, a state of grievous afflictions. And that's by the means of great discomfort, unhappiness, a state of despair, via the divine judgments Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah is going to bring upon this world. So for many great miseries should be done to them that in the latter time should dwell in the world, because they have walked in great pride. All right, so back to the article, and it says more than 5 billion people would die of hunger as a result of a full-scale nuclear war between the U.S. and Russia, according to a new study. The results of such a conflict would be catastrophic for food production, climate scientists at Rutgers University have found in a peer-reviewed study published in the context of the war in Ukraine. The data tell us one thing: we must prevent a nuclear war from ever happening, said one of the authors, Professor Alan Roebuck. And that's the problem with these prideful mere mortals, by thinking that they can intervene with the divine judgments of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah. What does it say in Romans 3:3? For what if some do not believe, should their unbelief make the faith of Yahweh Ba'Shem Shah without effect? So alluding to Isaiah 34:16, it states, seek ye out of the book of the Lord and read, and none of these shall fail. And that's referring to the biblical prophecies, which is written all throughout the scriptures. And we are in those times, pursuant to Revelation 11 chapter and 13 verse, the second woe is past and the third woe coming quickly. So it's no way you can prevent a nuclear war from ever happening, because your thoughts are not the Most High's thoughts. And it says the warning comes as humanity is just one misunderstanding, one miscalculation away from nuclear annihilation, according to UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres. And let's get that right quick, because we are in these prophetic times. And this is Isaiah 9:5. For every battle of the warrior is with confused noise and garments rolled in blood. So you watch shows like Spartacus or movies like 300, Alexander, The Gladiator. When those opposing forces fought, the grounds would be shaken due to the stampede, the loud war cries, the swords, the shields, and the bucklers. So that's like a confused noise. But within these prophetic times, but this should be with burning and fear of fire. And that's referring again to the third woe, World War III, which is going to be fought by nuclear missiles. Or within the scriptures, they're spiritually coded as arrows that are shot from one part of the continent to another part of the continent. And that's where you get intercontinental ballistic missiles. And it says Ukraine's Defense Intelligence Agency has warned of fresh Russian provocations at the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear plant in southern Ukraine, while a mayor said the city where the power station's base had come under fresh shelling. Rafael Grossi, Director General of the International Atomic Energy Agency, has described recent shelling at Europe's biggest nuclear plant as out of control and extremely serious. Even the smallest scenario caused famine, with the global average caloric production decreasing by 7% within 5 years of the conflict. So we are in the times of dearth, scarcity, which is also aforementioned within the scriptures, pursuant to Ezekiel 5:16, and I will increase the famine upon you and will break your staff of bread. And these type of divine judgments are going to be for 2/3 of our people, and also these other nations by default. But for the hopeful elect, pursuant to the book of Psalm, the 37th chapter, it says they should not be ashamed in the evil time, and in the days of famine they should be satisfied. So the true worshipers of Yahweh Bashim Shah will be taken care of in these dreadful times. And it says, in the largest scenario, a full-scale nuclear conflict, the global average caloric production decreased by about 90% between 3 and 4 years after fighting. The enormous decline in crop yields will cause billions of people to starve to death, 75% of the world's population within 2 years. And it's the worst possible outcome. So I'm just going to skip around, and I will leave an article in the description box for you all to read. And they're just going into how destructive and chaotic this nuclear impact will be upon the world. And I'm going to jump down right here. It says, UK should prepare for nuclear war. Hamish de Breton Gordon, the former head of the British Army's Chemical, Biological, Radioactive, and Nuclear Regiment, told Sky News the report was timely. However, he cautioned that the report was describing the worst possible outcome, basically Armageddon, when all nuclear weapons are loosed off, in my mind, highly unlikely. And that's off because this is one of the major biblical prophecies before Yahushua returns. As it says in 2 Ezra, the 15th chapter, cause them to be written in paper, for they are faithful and true. And the word Armageddon means Mount of Troops, where Yahweh Bashim Shah is going to gather all these global nations and bring them to the Middle East in the valley of Jehoshaphat, or the valley of Yahweh Shaphat, where he's going to judge all nations. And this is all for the country version of Zion, referring to the biblical Israelites, because all these different nations had a hand in our downfall as a people. So the Most High is going to avenge us back by these other nations going into nuclear combat, nuclear war. And let's get Isaiah the 34th chapter, the first verse. And as you can see, the Most High's wrath against nations. Come near, ye nations, to hear, and hearken, ye people, let the earth hear, and all that is therein, the world and all these that come forth of it. For the indignation, meaning the Most High's righteous anger, of the Lord is upon all nations, and his fury upon all their armies. He had utterly destroyed them, he had delivered them to the slaughter. Verse 3, their slain also should be cast out, and their stink should come up out of their carcasses, and the mountains should be melted with their blood. And those mountains are referred to these heathen governments. Verse 4, and all the hosts of heaven should be dissolved, and the heavens should be rolled together as a scroll. And that's where you get that mushroom cloud after the effects of those nuclear missiles dropping. And the Bishop Ayathon from the Connecticut camp, he recently went into the mushroom clouds, which made much sense in the spirit, and the significance of that mushroom cloud, how they're going to suck up all the impurities, the pollutants that's within this atmosphere, because the earth is defiled under the inhabitants thereof. And it says in Isaiah the 24th chapter, the earth is cleanly dissolved, and the earth is moved exceedingly. And that's by the effects of those nuclear missiles. So it says, and all the hosts of heaven should be dissolved, and the heavens should be rolled together as a scroll. And all their hosts shall fall down as the leaf falling off from the vine, and as a falling fig from the fig tree. Verse 5, for my sword, referring to these nuclear missiles, should be bathed in heaven. Behold, it shall come down upon Idumea. And that's the Greek way of saying Edom, which is referring to the so-called Caucasian race, the ones who are in that power seat of rulership in this day of time. Remember, it says in 2 Ezra, the 6th chapter, that Esau is the end of the world, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. And that takes me right to Isaiah 13 verse 1, the burden of Babylon, and that can be referred to the burden of America. Look at the current condition of these Americans, how they're loaded with stress, anxiety, pressure, uncertainty, and that's due to this engineered great reset. This world is going to be transitioning to a digital currency, but before that takes place, this grievous inflation is hurting the pockets of the everyday American consumer. And this world hasn't seen nothing yet, because Yahweh Bashim Shah is all about intensifying, increasing. So he's going to increase that burden upon these modern Babylonians. Verse 2, lift ye up a banner upon a high mountain, and that banner is referring to the Holy Scriptures, this word. And that high mountain is referring to America, that lofty city when you read Isaiah 26:5. Look how America exalts itself amongst these other nations. Exalt the voice unto them, shake the hand, that they may go into the gates of the nobles. And that's by our spiritual sound, by proclaiming the words of Yahweh Bashim Shah, first and foremost, starting with the apostles and elders of Great Millstone and their elders as well. It really took off in 2007 of that Great Awakening. And that's by the means of that spiritual vehicle, the internet. And look at that Great Awakening now. Pursuant to Baruch 5:5, I behold the children gathered from the west unto the east by the word of the Holy One. And this divine message is reaching to the elites of these heathen nations, and more so the nobility of Edom. Verse 3, I have commanded my sanctified ones, I have also called my mighty ones from my anger, even them that rejoice in my highness. Verse 4, the noise of a multitude in the mountains, like as of a great people, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together, the Lord of hosts mustered the host of the battle. That's referring again to Isaiah 9:5. How this, referring to this war, World War III, shall be with burning and fear of fire. And also in the book of Joel, the 2nd chapter, it refers to the nuclear missiles as the noise of chariots on the top of mountains should they leap. And how they're going to run like mighty men. Verse 5, they come from a far country, from the inner heaven, even the Lord in the weapons of his indignation to destroy the whole land. And that's referring to the whole landmass of America. In 2nd Ezra, the 16th chapter, in the 13th verse, his arrows that he shooted are sharp and should not miss when they begin to be shot into the ends of the world. So if you are spiritually inclined, you should know by default, that's not referring to a regular arrow. You had a movie came out in 1996 by the name of Broken Arrow, starring John Travolta and Christian Slater, and those broken arrows were alluding to nuclear weapons. So these are the weapons of Yahweh Bashim Shah's indignation. And they are not going to break their rates, meaning they are not going to miss, because the spirit of Yahweh Bashim Shah are going to be inside those nuclear missiles. So they're going to be spiritually guided to hit every designated point that Yahweh Bashim Shah intended for it to hit. Verse 6, how ye for the day of Yahweh Bashim Shah is at hand, it shall come as a destruction from the Almighty. Therefore shall all hands be faint, and every man's heart shall melt. Meaning these people are going to be stroking out, having heart attacks out here, of all the divine catastrophes Yahweh Bashim Shah is going to bring upon this place. So if it's mentioned in Revelation 11 chapter, how the remnant, referring to the ones who are spiritually inclined of the secrets of Yahweh Bashim Shah, if they're going to be affrighted, then how much more the ones who are not spiritually observing the times? So these people are not expecting the worst possible outcome. Verse 8, and they should be afraid, pains and sorrows should take hold of them. They should be in pain as a woman that travaileth, and this is the burden of Babylon. They should be amazed one in another, their faces should be as flames. Verse 9, behold, the day of Yahweh Bashim Shah cometh, cruel, both with wrath and fierce anger, to lay the land desolate, and he shall destroy the sinners thereof out of it. And I was looking up this word cataclysmic, which means that these divine judgments are going to be so disastrous that it's going to bring forth a fundamental change. In our case, a righteous fundamental change. So this worst possible outcome has to take place before Yahweh Shah returns. And going back to the title of this article, nuclear war would cause global famine with more than 5 billion people killed, new study finds. Which this fits biblical prophecies because it's mentioned in Isaiah 66:15 how the Lord will come with fire and with his chariots like a whirlwind. And it goes on to say, for by fire and by his sword, Yahweh Bashim Shah is going to plead with all flesh, and the slain of Yahweh Bashim Shah should be many, which alludes to the worst possible outcome. So I'll be out this out. You always edify, you all stay strong, keep pushing forward. Shalom.